What's going on YouTube? West Hobbies RC. So today we are back with part 5 of the Kraken 580 build. So in this video we are going to get all the rest of this thing finished up. We're going to get the FBL mount done, we're going to get the Ikon mounted, all the wiring done, and we are going to make a separate video on how to set up the Kraken to the Ikon. I've got a couple requests for that, so we will do that. So let's get started and let's get this thing finished up.
Started on, I believe, what's the last actual assembly part of the helicopter, and that is the FBL tray. So now you have two different ways to do this here. So if you notice, we have the bottom base metal mount. I can't speak today. And then you have a second tray. Then you're gonna have this little third tray with a couple more screws and spacers like these. So now, I personally am going to assemble this with the rubber dampeners. Now, if you fly a very hardcore 3D, I would recommend probably not using the rubber dampeners, since this model is being set up for more of just a regular flying, maybe some mild, acrobatic 3D kind of flying. We are going to do the, and plus we want rescue feature. And in the manual, they tell you if you're using rescue to make sure you run these dampeners, because it can create some issues with vibration. Even if I was flying hardcore 3D, I would still use the dampeners, because you don't want the FBL unit to take a lot of vibration, which you shouldn't have a lot of vibration anyways, but you never know. So we're going to assemble it this way. So what we're going to do is we're going to take blue Loctite. Now, if you look at this tray here, it's little, you got a bunch of different holes. All right, so these four, if you line this up, we are going to figure out which holes, because this is going to go this way. Yeah, this way. So you're going to see which holes line up with which part. So you got the outer holes are going to line up, and if you throw it this way, none of the holes line up. So our rubber mounts are going to go into these outer holes. So we're just going to take a little bit of Loctite, and we are just going to dab a little bit of Loctite on here, and we're going to screw these in. Now, you don't want to use any kind of driver, tool, or anything to tighten these down. You just want to tighten them by hand. So go ahead, snug them up good, and that is it. Don't use anything. You don't want nothing, because you will rip these dampeners. You'll tear them straight off clean, and you're just going to go ahead and put a little bit more Loctite, and then just do your other four. So they're going to go in, again, the outer holes here. So just go ahead, tighten them down by hand, and they should look like this. Now do your other two, and then we'll move on. So now that we got all four rubber dampeners put on, we're going to install the tray. So now you're just going to grab your little countersunk cap screws. It's going to be a 2mm driver. Again, we're using the old cheapo set of Amazon drivers until my MIPs get here, and I can actually have another good set of drivers, because these Amazon ones suck. So you're just going to go ahead, run these screws down. I recommend starting one in each corner like this, and then not dropping them, of course. But I recommend starting one screw in each corner. That way you line this tray up, and then just snug them down. You don't need to go overboard. You don't need to go crazy. Just snug them down. And then you can see how this works, how it, it kind of dampens and moves. So you're going to do the other two, and then we're going to clean this off real good, and we're going to throw this in the helicopter. So now we got this done. Of course, we still have to clean this off, but I'm going to do it afterwards. But this is what it's going to look like. You have your dampeners, and then you have your screws. Everything's Loctited in. This is going to come into here and sit down in here like this. So I would recommend, I already got my screw ready. You're going to put your little beauty ring on, your beauty washer through your socket screw, and then you're going to just simply go through these. There's going to be 4 holes, 2 on each side. Get one started, grab your next one, get it ready with your blue Loctite. I had to transfer from the Amazon cheapo drivers to this pair that I've had for I don't even know how long. But you're going to just run this screw into here as well. Get those started. Drop the driver on the ground, and then do the exact same on the other side for the other 2 screws. We'll just finish tightening up this last screw. We already did the other 3. Snug them down. Make sure this is all snugged down, which they are. Now I grab a little paper towel with some rubbing alcohol and just go ahead, clean this mount off real good. Get rid of any of the excess Loctite. That way, when we go to put our Ikon or your FBL unit, whatever you're using, you have a nice, good, clean bond. So now let's grab the Ikon out here. So now we're gonna grab our Ikon and we're gonna pay attention to whatever direction you want. Now I've already cleaned the bottom of the Ikon off, got the double-sided tape put on. So now we're gonna have wires back, port forward. This is a Bluetooth, so we're just gonna go ahead and I'm going to look at how I wanna mount this, and I'm going to mount it to the best of my abilities, dead in the center, like that. Push down, give it a real good push down, sturdy. Ikon is mounted. So now we can go ahead and we can start the wiring process. Now I know that you're supposed to have an extension here for the rudder servo, but I'm not going to run an extension. This rudder servo, I'm just going to plug directly in, and then I won't secure that, or I don't know, we'll worry about that. But that way there's no need for another extension. Something else fails. If we have to take the boom off in the event of a crash or rebuilding this helicopter, we could always just cut the little bit of the glue that I put on, or not even glue. You guys already know the stuff I use, this fabric paint, and we can always just, take that off very easily. So now let's get started wiring this helicopter. Wiring is going to be the same way I did on the Raw 580. So we are going to run our 2 front cyclic servos, of course, all wires and heat shrink, so they're black. We're gonna run these guys down, up and around like this, up into here. We will have to shorten the elevator, or the back, elevator wire, servo wire, so it's just a direct run right into the FBL unit. These run this way through here, and then the ESC wires we'll have to just do like we did before, heat shrink nice and neatly, run them around the frame like so, and run them straight back up into here. So the only wire that we actually have to modify, cut, and shorten will be the elevator wire. So this should be a very simple, easy wiring. We just need to start covering everything in heat shrink, and let's get that done. So now that we're going to start the wiring, covering heat shrink, something I get asked a lot: what heat shrink do I use? So I personally don't use the glue heat shrink. I use regular old heat shrink, 2-to-1 shrink ratio. I use 3/16. I buy a 100-foot roll of it at a time. You don't have to buy this much. I build a lot of helicopters. I do a lot of wiring. So I buy 100-foot rolls at a time. But for just covering each servo wire like I do, how we come out of the servos here, they'll be black. Each one will get its own 3/16 heat shrink. You just take the end of the connector off, which is real simple to do, and then it slides right over the wire. You can run it all the way up right to the little rubber grommet on the servo, and it covers it beautifully. Get your wires black, and then they are completely unnoticeable and out of the way. So we got the heat shrink over these wires. So we have our ESC signal wire, and then our backup BEC wire, and our governor port wire. And then we got these 2 wires all heat shrunked up to about 2.5 inches left this way, so they're all uniform. And then what I like to do after I run them all together, I get a bigger piece of heat shrink and I cover them all up at one time. Just makes it look better. So now we're going to heat these wires. A little tip: when you cover your wires in heat shrink, use your heat gun. This is my good old Harbor Freight heat gun. And when you heat the wires up, it makes them pliable, and you can actually bend them to shape. So what I like to do is I will use some medium CA, and I tack glue these 2 pieces of heat shrink together in a couple areas. So that way this stays nice and neat. And then I will heat it up and bend it, and then let it cool. So I have a nice S curve, and then an S curve, and then the same with this. I'll put a little tack of CA to hold these 2 wires together, run them down, bend them. So that way you get a nice uniform look to the wires. And then when they come out of here, you're not just pushing it up against, you have a nice curve around. And then I'll have all these wires tied up together in a nice straight line, and all signals facing up. And then that way it's a cleaner run. And then we will see what size we need to cut this off at. And we'll probably run this one down and around like we did with the Raw 580. And then bring it back into the main junction harness right here, so it's nice and clean. So let's get these wires run to here, and then we'll figure out where we're going to do with this wire down to here. So this is where we're at right now. We went ahead, wires up, down, and around, covered in heat shrink, of course. ESC wires come out through our little cover. Yes, this cover does come included in the SAB kits, the Raw, the Kraken. I believe all SAB kits include this little wire cover, because I know a few of you asked if it was included. It just screws on the top, screws on the bottom. So we got a zip tie,
And then as the wires meet the 4, because now this is going to be 4 wires zip tied through, and then they come out here with the 4 wires. So we have our right servo, our left servo, we have throttle, and then we have ESC power and governor wire. So now we went ahead and we cut the end off of this servo. So we'll cover this in heat shrink. We're going to bring this servo end down around here like this, bring it into this bundle, and bring it out to match these. And then these wires will give us a nice bend up into the FBL unit like this, so they'll all be followed together. And then the excess little bit of wire will tuck up nice up into this upper shell of the boom cover, and we are good to go. Now the rudder servo wire goes directly into the FBL unit. We could put an extension there, but I like it a direct plug-in, one less port to fail. If you have an extension, something can happen. It could come unplugged, it can fail. I don't really like extensions. I like direct runs. So now let's continue on with that back servo. We'll get the heat shrink put on the wire. We'll get a new end put on it, and then we can start the wrap around here. Wiring will be done quick and easy. And then we need to solder on EC5 connectors, and we need to solder on bullet connectors to the motor. Get that soldered up. We can plug these wires just like the raw. I'm going to run these up and through here like this. EF battery wires out the bottom. And then we can completely throw the blades on, and we can pretty much finish up with the Kraken 580 build. All right, so we went ahead, got the wire ran, heat shrunk black, so it's nice and neat. It comes down through a little bit of double-sided tape to hold it under the port down there. So now that comes up and it feeds into the main harness, some heat shrink to cover both this whole harness up, and then now we have everything laid out here. So on the Ikon with the raw 580, Kraken 580, it's going to be servo 1, 2, and 3. So your back servo is going to be servo 1, your right servo is going to be servo 2, and your left servo is going to be servo 3. So 1, 2, 3, and that's how you're going to wire it into the Ikon. So I'm going to go ahead and route those. Of course, your throttle is going to go into channel 1, and then servo 1, servo 2, servo 3, and then your BEC power wire can go into anything. I'm going to put it into channel 2, and then your governor wire is going to go into governor port. So this is your throttle line. This is your governor line. Now this is coming out of the Hobby Wing ESC. So this is the Hobby Wing 120. So we have our throttle line, our governor line, and our BEC power line. So now you have BEC power here. This is just a backup redundant power, which is something I really like about the Hobby Wing. And when I personally do any kind of helicopter with a two-cell LiPo or anything, I always like to split my power as well. So I like that Hobby Wing does that. And then now you see we have right servo, left servo, and back servo. So if you're looking from the back of the helicopter, this is servo 1, this is servo 2, and this is servo 3. So we're going to get all that wired in nice and neatly, curve these wires around. They'll tuck right up into here so they'll look nice, clean, and then we can start soldering up the ESC. All right, so now we got the servo wires up, ran directly in. So again, we have our BEC, our throttle, our 3 servos, 1, 2, 3 onto the Ikon port, and then tail servo and governor. So now all this is done. We will come back with some of my favorite fabric paint, and then we will just put a bead of that across the top here, so that way the ports will never fall out. And then we can always cut this off if we need to later, and then we can start the program. So now let's go ahead and start soldering up the ESC. So we just went ahead and finished up soldering up the ESC, motor bullets, EC5s. We also grabbed the battery, soldered up EC5. So all this is done. All the soldering is done. All of the wiring is done. So now we can move on to the last steps. And the last steps of the build are battery tray and canopy grommet mounts. So I'm going to end this part off with just the battery tray and canopy grommets, and then we're going to make a complete separate video on programming and setting up the Ikon. And in that video, we will go over satellite placement, and that's just because I don't exactly know what I want to do yet. So we're going to be running DSMX satellites, carbon satellites, so I'm not exactly sure where I want to put them. So for now, let's just finish up this. The helicopter is done, and then we'll go over a separate how to program your Ikon
And in that video, I'll show you where I put the satellites because I just don't know where I want to do it yet. On the raw 580, I put them on the back side of the servo. Antennas facing out like this, but I don't know if I want to do that or not because these antennas are long, so we might lay them down. I don't know yet. But let's get to putting the battery tray on and the canopy grommets. So now we are going to get the canopy grommets put into the canopy. So you're going to have your little grommet, looks like this. Then you're going to have your little push lock. So with your grommet, you're just going to simply go ahead, insert the grommet into the canopy like this. Very simple, very easy. Now, they tell you to put a dab of medium CA on the grommet to ensure that it will never move or come off. So on the back side, I am going to just put a dab of CA, and I want to do it on the back side so that way it's not visible on the front side. And then just put it into place, and then grab your push lock and go ahead and push your push lock through like that. And then you flip the canopy over and do the same on the other side. Just grab your grommet, go ahead and insert it into place. Now some grommets will be tighter than other grommets just depending on how they are made. Like the first grommet we put in was very tight. This grommet was very loose, and this grommet is pretty tight. So just go ahead and work that grommet into place. Once you get it in, I like to use a driver sometimes just to kind of lift the lip up, and then you're going to make sure flip it over. We see it's not all the way secure here, so we're just going to carefully work it into place like that. Then we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take a drop of medium CA on the back side and then push our push lock through the grommet just like that. So now our canopy grommets are done and secured, and then we are going to, now you get in the kit, you get this stuff. And the manual doesn't mention this stuff anywhere. So this is basically a liner, and it's optional to use or not to use. So what this is going to do is this, you put on the canopy basically like this, and you can start it on one end, and you just work this stuff around, and it's like a rubber guard. And what this does is this stops from when you're putting the canopy on and off the helicopter. It stops you from scratching the inside of the canopy up. Now, of course, I'll go back through, and you're going to want to put a little bit of medium CA in spots, but just for video purposes to show you what this stuff is, if you are wondering. And it just goes on the canopy all the way around like this, and you just work it till you finish it. So let's get that done. We'll see what it looks like. Basically, that was what it will look like when you're done. And it just lines inside. I put some medium CA in a couple spots. Just carefully drop it so that way it can't come off. And then when you slide the canopy on and off, you don't risk chipping or scratching the paint around the edges. It's just kind of like a bumper guard. So we got the battery done, of course, strapped into place. We are ready to go for that aspect. So now we just need to throw the blades on the main and the blades on the tail, which are self-explanatory. And we're going to get those tossed on. There's probably a spacer in between each blade, and there is, according to the manual, spacer. So let's get the blades tossed on and get the canopy on it, and let's finish this video up. There we go. SAB Kraken 580 is complete. So again, this is what that little rubber guard is for, so that way when you slide on and off and you might nick or hit the swash plate or something, it doesn't hurt the canopy. But exception of the satellites, which we will save that for the setup on the Ikon video. I'll just show you guys what I did with it. We are completed. So we got the canopy done, we got all the electronics on, we got the blades on. These blades are two-sided from what it looks like, so I guess you can run depending on like what design you want. If you want to put that design or this design up, so I just figured this design looked good. We got the tail blades on, everything's tightened down. So the build series of the Kraken 580 is complete. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. You already know the deal. Take care and have a great day.